Hey, I'm Coach Steve Smith, and you're watching Average Joe's Sports Talk. I'm Steve Smith, Piedmont High School head football coach.
All right, Coach. It's an honor to be out here and in your office, actually. Coach, we want to start out by asking you, how did you get into your coaching career? I know you played at JSU, correct?
Yeah.
All right.
I was from Cherokee County High School. Of course, back in the day when I graduated, '88, it was Center High School. Played for Coach Bobby Joe Johnson, and he and Coach Beckett, who was the assistant football coach there at the time, they pretty much coached us in most of our sports from youth league on up. You know, baseball, football, basketball. I always loved sports. Had an opportunity to get to play at Jacksonville State from '88 to '91. Coach Burgess let me stick around in '92 as a student assistant. I always wanted to stay connected to the game. Tried to listen to a lot of people out there that told me that you don't want to coach for a living. You know, that's the low pay, long hours, and all those types of things that people told me. And I actually got an undergraduate degree from Jacksonville State in computer science because I like math, and at that time it was a hot field, you know, with good pay and good money. And after I graduated, I had a first interview with Russell Athletic and got offered a job down there. And when they told me what the job was going to entail with 6-10 hour days, programming, sitting behind a desk, not ever getting to be outside, the next week I went and enrolled in graduate school. At that time, there was a shortage of teachers, and so they had a thing called the non-traditional fifth-year program where you could go back and get your education degree and earn your master's at the same time. And so that's what I did. And in 1994, I got my first head coaching job, or actually 1995, got my first head coaching job at Cedar Bluff High School. Was there for 11 seasons, and then came to Piedmont in January of 2006, and I'm year 14 now.
Awesome. Now, Coach, when you said you was a graduate assistant at JSU, a lot of people may know this, and some people may not. They actually won the national title that first year you were there, correct? '92.
Yes, if I said graduate assistant, I said that wrong. I was a student assistant because I had not yet graduated.
Okay, I got you.
I had the fall of '92. The year that we won the national championship, I was there as a student assistant. I had another season of eligibility left to play, but I was a backup quarterback. Had a couple classes that I had to take that were Tuesday and Thursday afternoons that was going to conflict with practice. And Coach Burgess, being the great man that he is, he and I talked about it, and he knew I was wanting to graduate there in December. And instead of just cutting me loose, he told me why didn't I stick around if I had any aspirations of being a coach. He saw some things in me and offered me an opportunity to stay on as a student assistant. So I got to help out with Coach Maniscalco, the offensive coordinator, position coach that I had played under for 4 years. And you know, that was an opportunity of a lifetime. And we had some great teams at JSU the time I was there, 88, 89, 90, 91. I think we won 3 Gulf South Conference championships, played in the national championship game, and come up on the short end in '89 and '91, and then in '92 was able to win the national championship, defeating Pittsburgh State, and that really got me fired up about coaching and having the opportunity to stay involved with football. It's just a game that's been a big part of my life. You know, from the time riding around with my dad, listening to Alabama games on the radio back when I was a young kid, and watching the bowl games, and the few times every year that Alabama got to be on national television, you know, just growing up a Bear Bryant fan and Alabama football fan, I just couldn't envision myself going on to my adult life in football not being a big part of it.
Big part of it, absolutely. Let's talk about those teams right there you were just mentioning, the transition that you were learning from, okay, now I'm seeing what they were teaching from a different angle.
Right.
Even though you learned that as a player, when you started seeing that through, you know, a different light. Can you talk about that transition when you first think, okay, now this is why? Did it start making a little bit more sense to you then?
Well, I will say this, you know, I think a lot of people kind of rank coaches. They say you got high school coaches, you got college coaches, you got professional coaches. You know, I've always been a believer that if a man could coach, he could coach. And
I agree.
You know, some of the best examples of coaches I've ever seen were those guys that coached at Jacksonville State. And, you know, not to diminish anything they ever did. I mean, Coach Burgess' tenure there was extremely successful, but he basically come from Oxford High School and brought a bunch of high school guys with him. And our coordinators on that national championship team were Coach Maniscalco and Coach Houston. And, you know, Coach Jay Brown recruited me. Joe Billings, who was on staff at that time, I'd played with Joe early on in my career, and then he stayed on as a graduate assistant, but he actually was the offensive line coach on that national championship team. And you know, those are guys that whenever their time at Jacksonville State ended, all those guys went right back to the high school ranks and, you know, were very successful high school coaches. And I guess I just learned from them more than anything else how you treat people. You know, still at the end of the day, you can know all the X's and O's in the world, but it's how you treat people, relationships you have with your players. And those guys and many others that were on staff at that time, and I'd be remiss if I didn't name all of them guys and tell them that what a special thanks I have for them for the impact they made in my life. But just that close-knit family environment that they created there, all those coaches and players. And you know, you can't run into a player today that played all 4 years for Coach Burgess and for that staff that wouldn't run through a wall for them. It's still a close-knit group, and learning how to treat people and you know, many of those guys we stay in touch to this day, you know, and just the relationships that are formed there, I think, is probably the most overlooked part of it. You know, and even on the college level now, when you hear people talk about Coach Saban and Coach Swinney and all the things that they do, the most overlooked part is they have great relationships with their players. Absolutely. They can be tough, they can be demanding, they've got some unbelievable perks at some of these places now and things that they got for their kids, but at the end of the day, if you really want to see why they're successful, it's because the success of their players is what's paramount to them. It's not necessarily who knows the most X's and O's. It's being able to help those guys develop, and you know, I think that relationship that you form with your coach is a special thing.
I agree with that. Now let's fast forward to '95 at Cedar Bluff, when you were about to take the field for the first time. You went through the spring, and you know, this is your team. Talk about your mindset going into that. Was you nervous, or was you excited, or what was going through your mind in that first game, and when you knew this was, hey, this is all mine now?
I was cocky and dumb, to be honest with you, and I really didn't go through spring with them. What had happened there, I got hired at Cedar Bluff the last week of July.
Oh, man.
So I'm talking about literally got hired. The gentleman that I replaced, he ascended from head football coach and assistant principal to the principal. And it wasn't like Mr. Mintz picked me from a group of talented candidates. He was a math teacher that coached football and baseball, and he needed somebody that could teach math and coach football and baseball, and there wasn't many of us that were available the 28th of July. Wow. And so I really got that job. I was only 24 years old. I was about to have my 25th birthday, and I only knew how things had been done as a player. I knew two philosophies. I knew what Coach Johnson did with me in high school. I knew what Coach Burgess did with me in college. And I love both of those guys tremendously, and very fortunate to play for them. But I had no idea what it took to run a team. I thought I could. I thought I can get out there and do that. But I made a bunch of mistakes that first year. And in fact, Cedar Bluff is a traditionally rich school. You go back to the 60s and see some of the success that they had there when Coach Bruce was there. Well, I almost took all the work that many great coaches and players had put in before, and I almost destroyed it in one season. We went 2-8 that year, and I finished the season with 13 players.
Wow.
You know, that's
Junction boys.
Well, and like I said, most of it was just being foolish and not knowing any better, you know. And you know, our first game, we were supposed to play Raglan the first game of the season, and that 1995 season was a year that Raglan had to fold the program. And so we were left without a game one, and this shows you how brash and dumb I was. But I was dead set we weren't going to be open week one. So I started trying to find out somebody in the state that had an opening. And Spring Garden was in the county, but not in the area with Piedmont, with Cedar Bluff, excuse me. And Coach Lewis, who's well known, he was a great basketball coach that worked here with me. He had taken over the football job there. Well, you could tell that Coach Lewis was a lot wiser than me, because he had kind of taken over late, and he told me, so well, we're not going to play a game. I need all the time I can to get my team ready. So we didn't play Spring Garden. Alexandria had a week one opening. Matt Campbell, you may have heard of him. I think Matt was going into his 9th or 10th grade year at that time, and you know, he's probably as good as I've seen around this part of the state, you know. Wow. But I knew better than to play Alexandria, so that wasn't an option. I had no way some dummy like me in a 1A school is going to try to take on Matt Campbell and Coach Ginn. And then there was a little team in South Alabama called Sampson High School that was open. And when I called them, they said, sure, we'll play. Just won't play on Saturday so we can make the long drive up and not have to miss school. And they said, you don't have to pay us nothing. That should have all been a clue right there. And so they came up, and it was 35-0 Sampson at the halftime. They let us score 8 in the second half, and so we got beat 35-8 in the first game I ever coached. And I think they finished that year maybe 10-0. I think it was like their third consecutive regular season of finishing 10-0. There was a reason they were open. But again, maybe it's being brash and dumb and young, thinking that, well, we'll play anybody, you know. So I did have enough smarts to not play Alexandria, though. That was one of my better moves that first
Especially
year.
there in those years.
Oh yeah, that was one of my better moves, was not playing them. But didn't a whole lot go right that year. Probably deserved to be fired for multiple issues, just things that you know, just a young guy that's never been out there and been in charge. But Mr. Mintz hung in there and gave me a second chance, and I'll be forever grateful for that, because the next year we went 8-4, and then the following year we had an undefeated regular season, and you know, lost in a playoff game to a parish team. Really good game. We lost a game that we didn't give up a first down, if that makes sense. But you know, but there was even lessons to be learned there that I was able to do. Those first 3 years, I spent all my time with the varsity, but I didn't spend any time with our junior high program. And so a lot of people think that we had this just unreal success at Cedar Bluff, but in 98, 99, 2000, we went 4-7, 4-7, 4-7. We went 4-6 in the regular season each year. We'd make the playoff. Back then it was just area, and we'd make the playoffs as a runner-up in a 3-team area, and then we'd go get beat 60-14, 57-0 in the first round of the playoffs. So learned a valuable lesson there about investing time in the program to the junior high level, and some things that learning that lesson helped me when I came to Piedmont in 2006 with part of the blueprint on how we was going to try to build this program back to where it used to be in the mid-'80s and early '90s.
Now, and at Cedar Bluff, you know, you said you had those seasons where you were down, but you actually had 2 area titles, 4 region titles. Is that correct, Cedar Bluff?
I think that's right. I'm pretty sure that's
you ended
right.
up with an 85-45 record.
Right.
Was there ever a point at Cedar Bluff where you thought, this is going to be a destination job for me?
Oh, sure. People don't understand. I mean, I never got into this profession for 1A versus 6A, 7A. It never was about that. I just wanted to be happy and get to coach football. And I'll tell you that the people in Cedar Bluff, Alabama are as good as gold. Many great relationships we made there.
I met some very nice.
I had some players, you know, we had a couple of Division I quarterbacks. Cole Peace signed with Toledo in 2003. Jamie Hampton signed with Troy after being committed for a long time to Purdue. Great players that came through there, great assistant coaches. My administration, Mr. Mintz, was my principal the whole time and became one of my very best friends. And just a lot of folks over there that were really, really good to us. Rachel, my wife, also taught and coached, and she had gotten hired over there, and we worked together for a couple years over there, you know, before I took this job. But you know, when this job at Piedmont came open, I'm from Center. You're supposed to hate Piedmont. I mean, it was our biggest rival, and you know, I didn't even realize at the time that Piedmont was a city school. I thought it was part of the Calhoun County system. But then when Mr. Aiken convinced me to come over and just talk with him about the job, and we had Sean and Sloan were 4 and 2 years old. My wife Rachel was pregnant with our little girl Savannah, who would be born the following June. And you know, it was an opportunity to come here. Financially, it was a little bit better pay at the time, and it allowed Rachel to be able to stay home with Savannah until she got in school, something that we had missed out on with our first 2 kids, you know, and wouldn't take anything for those years that she got to spend at home with them till they all got in school. And it was just a God thing. It was a door open for us at the perfect time and a perfect storm, everything coming together, and just very glad to be here.
In 2006, you came over as AD and head coach here at Piedmont. Did you ever envision what we know Piedmont as now when you got here? And the facilities and everything?
I got to say now on the facilities, you know, our superintendent now, Mike Hayes, was our director of operations, which he was big time over the facilities. And then Brian Young was our mayor back in 2009, I guess, when he was elected. And you know, in a city system, especially in a small city system, you got to have a lot of people working together. Coach Abbott, Rudy Abbott, was our commissioner for this district, and a lot of those guys just got their heads together and started having, you know, talks about where they'd like to see Piedmont go as a school system. Mr. Aiken, superintendent, I definitely don't need to leave him out, but our Board of Education, the City Council, just everybody pulling their thoughts together on, you know, this town is a blue-collar town. At one time, about 5,500 people here in the 85 census. And, you know, and now then, you know, you see at that time, same time, I think there was like 5,000 jobs in town because you had 4 big factories that were operating at full capacity. Well, a lot of those places were shutting down, going overseas. People were having to move. In fact, my first 2 years here in 6 and 7, we were 2A for 2 years. That's how far the enrollment had dropped. But those guys all got together, and those ladies, and they said, let's try to build this school system back, and make it special, and see if we can help build our town back, maybe through having a great school. And to say it would be something I thought of to the extent of what it is right now would probably be a little far-fetched, but with all those people working together and people doing the things that they did, these facilities are second to none in the state of Alabama. And our state report card just came out last week, and our school graded a 92 on our state report card. I think we were the 6th highest ranked system in the state. You look at the people in front of you, the Vestavias and the Mountain Brooks and places like that, and I couldn't think of a better place for a person to send their child to school, and the athletic programs that we have, boys and girls sports. I mean, it's just a great mix and small town environment.
Now, entering this 2019 season, you've had 16 10-win seasons under your coaching belt. I'm not very good at math. I'm a dad personally, but there's only 10 games on a schedule every year, Coach. What's that key ingredients that keeps this continuing to roll like it is right now?
Well, I do think you have to have that involvement with the program all the way down to the ground level. And I got a lot of good friends in the coaching profession that complain about their junior high team not wanting to do what their varsity team's doing, and they can't get along with their peewees, or they don't want the peewee team to play on the game field. And if you want to build a football program, you got to be able to work with everybody from the ground up. It can't be 3 different systems. And we don't expect our kindergartners and first graders to be able to run the same offense, defense we do, but they try to do some of the same stuff we do. In terminology, we try to make that to be across the board. And as far as all the other sports goes, I tell people all the time, the girls that play volleyball, that's just as important to them as football is to the football guys. And so we tried to create a culture here to where all the kids are in weight training, all the kids have summer workouts, the junior high teams and the varsity teams. The coaches are asked to be here at summer workouts. It's just not the football coach up here running the workouts. And everybody's bought into that. We've got one unified athletic booster club that raises between $65,000 and $70,000 a year, and all that money goes back into the sports. They pour all that money back in, and everybody gets a chunk of it. It's not a quarterback club, and the cheerleaders get part, the track team gets part, golf gets a part. Every sport gets a share of that money that they raise, and just getting everybody to buy in and that unity, that one unified program. We use 1P logo, for all our sports. It goes on the batting helmets, the side of the football helmets, on the side of the facilities, the 50-yard line. Just getting people to buy into that. We're one program, and we still have problems just like anybody does within a family. There's still some times that people disagree, but for the most part, everybody in this town and this system are pulling for each other. And it does my heart good to see our guys get excited for our band, and our band to get excited for our drama department, and the kids to get involved with the drama department and see the appreciation they got for the hard work that those kids put in. And then just the environment with the faculty and staff here every day is a great place to come to work. And I can honestly say I don't dread getting up coming to work. I enjoy what I do.
That's awesome. And I got to look at your percentages over your career. First of all, congratulations, you're over 200 wins, rocking around close to the 210 ranks. I think it's 208 or 209 at the moment. But most importantly, winning that many games, and you're right at 77%.
Yeah.
That is an elite company with the Danny Horns and Josh Niblets and Paul Benefield. What does that mean to you personally?
Well, it's a testimony to the stability that we've had with our staff. I'm in year 14 here. Coach Blanchard's been here with me the whole time. Coach Glover's been here with me the whole time. Coach Clifford, Coach Bramlett's been here the whole time. Coach Walker, who's been here at Piedmont now for 9 years, I guess, was with me for 6 at Cedar Bluff, so he's been there with me for 15 years. Coach Bevel and Coach Pruitt, they're the newbies on our staff, if you want to call them that. They both played for me here.
There you go.
Just a lot of people that have common goals, and a lot of guys that are willing to do their part to make the team successful. And then you having just great players, kids that buy in. We're still big on team over me type stuff. Have a lot of kids that probably could have went to other places and been a star, but they've been willing to accept whatever role they had here We don't play a lot of guys both ways, and I know that sounds unusual for a Class 3A school, but we have a lot of guys that just play on one side of the ball that would have been people that would have gotten to play probably on both sides had they been at a different place. And sacrificing those things for the betterment of the team has been something, that I'm really proud of, and that's played a big part in our success.
We always like to ask the great coaches this question. Is it the thrill of victory that drives you more, or the fear of getting beat?
I heard people say before they wanted people that were scared of getting beat. I don't look at it that way. I try to look at everything in a positive manner. I like to win. So I'd still
Glass
say
half full type guy.
I still say the thrill of victory is what I'm in it for, because you do it long enough, every now and then you're going to experience a defeat. But, you can't be afraid of failing. And so therefore, just having confidence in what we do and having confidence in the way that we do it. And you go out there on Friday night, you prepare, you do your best, you try to get your team ready, but ultimately groups of 15 to 18-year-olds are pretty much going to determine the outcome. And I tell the kids all the time, it's not about what I can draw up on the board and what the other coach can draw to defense that. We're not going to get to play a play. It's all going to be about how they go out and play and the kind of effort they give. And they bought into that, and they always go out. I've never had a time where I've been disappointed in the effort that we've given. Now, our execution sometimes, my play calling sometimes, leave a little bit to be desired, but I never can complain about the effort that our guys give, and they walk on the field, they expect to win, and it's a good feeling when you got guys that expect to win no matter who's on the other sideline, and they're going to give you everything they got, and I'm very proud of that.
Absolutely. Tell us about a coach that you may have coached against, or coaches here in the state,
right,
that sticks out in your mind, or coaches that you really like. You watch film on, you're like, man, he's really got it going on.
Well, I mentioned the coaches that had influences on me. I really appreciated them. I've had an opportunity to coach against the Paul Benefields and the Danny Horns, and have gotten beat plenty of times by people like that. Their records speak for themselves, and they are outstanding football coaches. Simple, don't try to overcomplicate things. I've tried to copy a lot of that. Rusty Jackaway was a veteran coach at Sandrock when I was starting at Cedar Bluff, and we were big rivals, but he always took the time to try to help me out, and I appreciate Coach Jackaway's influence that he had. Then there are people that you coach against, and you just respect them for, what they get out of their players. You look across the field, and you may even have a more talented bunch, but Lee Osment comes to mind. I think Lee Osment's one of the best football coaches out there. He always got the most out of his players. They played hard, they played aggressive, they played right there to the whistle, just like you want you guys to play. I always respected the job that he did. And then just getting over the course of the years, getting to work maybe in some all-star events and things like that with the Terry Curtises of the state, and hearing how they do things, head-to-head probably about 8 or 10 times with Keith Etheridge during the time when Leeds was in a successful run. We were pretty successful here. Some of those matchups were some classic games, and just like I said, being around and watching some of those guys, you can tell when you put the tape on, you can tell a well-coached team, and you don't have to realize whether they won the game or not. You can tell if they're well coached by just how they do things. And so I guess I would still characterize myself as old school as far as believing that you got to run the football, stop the other team from running, and you still got to be able to block and tackle. And you can line up in all the new age formations and the new age fronts and all the new blitzes and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, you got to have your kids prepared to be in position and then make the plays when they are in position. Those guys I mentioned, they do an outstanding job of that year in, year out.
That was actually one of my questions. I was going to ask, did you consider yourself old school or a new school type guy? It seemed like you're kind of a hybrid of the two.
Well, I think our philosophy more matches up with old school philosophy, but I can remember, and I tell this sort of half-heartedly and joking, that year in 1995, my first year at Cedar Bluff, when we finished with 13 players, we were playing West End, and that's when Coach Randy Hallmark was there, and they were in their heyday of about 3 or 4 consecutive 10-0 regular seasons. And we were going to Walnut Grove to play, and by this time we had dwindled to about 16 or 17 players. We went down to the 13, and I remember going out there and going in a shotgun formation with 4 wideouts and 1 back and a quarterback. And I had 2 or 3 people ask me the next week, are you crazy? What are you doing? Is that the run and shoot? You know, that's what back then. Before you heard the terminology spread, it was run and shoot.
Yep.
And everybody, like, you run and shoot. And I said, no, really, what it is if I can make people go out there with them, that's fewer people we got to block to run the ball. And you know, as time wore on, about '99 at Cedar Bluff, when we were in the midst of those 3 consecutive 4-7 seasons, I had a freshman class come in that had Cole Peace. That, like I said, he signed with Toledo in the MAC. Josh Moten, who left Cedar Bluff as the all-time leading receiver in the history of Alabama football. That Terrell Zachary, I think, wound up breaking his record, but I think Josh is still number 2 all-time in receiving yardage in the state. Lance McCullough, a big lineman that signed with Middle Tennessee State, I said, you know, we had a year there, we had 5 seniors and 4 of them signed scholarships, 3 of them to D1 schools at a 1A school. And that was when their senior year was probably one of the best teams I ever had at Cedar Bluff, and we had steamrolled through the season. And it happened to be the 2 years that Clay County dropped down from 2A to 1A.
Man.
And so we went to Clay County, and I tell everybody, we played as good as we could play and still got beat 30-14. And Clay County went on to win the 1A championship there in 2002, and I think those were the only 14 points they gave up during the playoffs, if I remember right. But, you know, having players like that, and so we started throwing around a little bit. Well, we got this reputation as this wide open spread team. Now, if you go back and look at the scores from some of them years, you know, what people don't tell you is I've been on the losing end giving up 77 points to Parrish, scoring 50-something, giving up 77. We gave up 81 points to Summerton Christian one night.
Wow.
We won a game against Westbrook Christian, I can't remember the exact year, 68-63, and it didn't even go overtime.
Man.
So we scored a lot of points, but we gave up a bunch. And, you know, that was one of the things when we came to Piedmont. You know, I think people had us as this high-flying offense that scored a lot of points, and I like to score a lot of points now, but that was something from day one. We said we're going to learn to play better defense, and we're going to play good and on the defensive side. And, you know, so I think that's more in line with old school philosophy. Like I said, if you look at us on film, we're going to be in the shotgun 99% of the time, and so people are going to say, well, they're a spread team, but we still run it probably 75% and throw it maybe 25%. So we still, our facts on paper line up more with an old school philosophy.
Absolutely, I love it. What's been the toughest loss of your career? One that, when the horn sounded, you was just sick.
Well, you know, losing in the state championship game last year to Flomaton was a tough one to swallow. You know, it was one of those games to where Flomaton reminded me a whole lot of our team from '09 when we were in the championship for the first time and played Cordova. You know, probably underdog in the game. And, you know, and I don't know if we played Cordova 10 times that year. I don't know how many of them would have won, but I know we won that day, the one that counted. And
there you go.
And kind of the same deal happened. You know, Flomaton was a team that had never advanced past the 3rd round of the playoffs, but they got hot at the right time. And they played a great game that day. And we just came up on the short end of the stick. That one stung, obviously, because the magnitude of when that game was played. But some other games, we lost a semifinal game here in 2010 to Hamilton. Was a game that, you know, that could have propelled us into a state championship matchup that year with Leeds, and we came up short. The 17 semifinal loss here to Randolph County, where we led 21-0 at halftime and gave up a touchdown, held them out on a 2-point conversion, but then they converted an onside kick, got it down, and they scored on a 4th and goal from the 1 with about 5 seconds to go in the game. You know, that was a tough one to swallow. And you know, as a coach, you remember those games a lot more than you remember the wins. And you know, those are all games, because even though we've had a lot of success and we've actually won some blue trophies and all, those are times that me as a coach, I can remember that, you know, what if we could have been playing in another one or something like that. So, you know, but to be fair with that, you also have some wins along the way that you didn't expect, or maybe the experts didn't expect you to win one, like the semifinal game at Leeds in '09 that got us to that first championship game, the actual game against Cordova where we were underdogs, you know, in everybody's mind. You know, having some wins like that along the way, knocking off Madison Academy in 2015 up at their place in the 3rd round after they had beat us here. You know, another one of those memorable losses was a 13 game here against Madison Academy in the 3rd round, and went to overtime. We went for 2 in the win and didn't get it and got beat 34-33. That's when Carry On was a junior or sophomore, I can't remember, but it's one of their best teams, you know. And So you remember those games, remember those losses, and as a coach, kind of kick yourself for some things that you could have done better to give your team a chance. But it's part of it.
As a coach, I always like to ask coaches this: what's your favorite quote of all time?
Probably my favorite. One of them is one that I've just always used. I don't know if anybody ever said it, but I tell kids you're gonna get out of something whatever you put into it. And that's in life, that's in your marriage, that's in your schoolwork, that's in your football, that's in your weight room training. I mean, you're going to get out of something whatever you put into it. If you put half-hearted effort into it, expect half-hearted results, So that's one that I kind of use a lot. I guess probably one of my favorite quotes, and it's more of a modern-day quote, we've got it up in our locker room. That was one that Coach Saban said a few years back at Alabama, and that was, mediocre people don't like high achievers, and high achievers don't like mediocre people. And I said, if you think about that, and I ask the kids every year to take an inventory yourself, what are you? Are you a high achiever? Are you a mediocre person? And if you're mediocre, you typically going to like the other mediocre people that are like you, and you're going to kind of be jealous a little bit of the ones that are high achievers. And if you're a high achiever, you certainly don't want mediocre people out in the huddle with you. So that's one of my favorite sayings too.
Absolutely. What do you think the biggest difference in football in general is from your playing days to right now as a coach?
It's good and bad. Good and bad. The game is a lot safer now than it used to be from the equipment standpoint, the officiating standpoint, the enforcement of penalty standpoint. All of those things are beneficial to the players. The better equipment, the restrictions on practice times. I mean, we all can relate back to the times to where I don't know that any of my coaches in high school ever had a practice schedule. I don't mean that to throw Coach Johnson on the bus, but typically we went in pads Monday through Wednesday. If he didn't like how it went, we'd go in pads again on Thursday, and we typically scrimmaged every day, and we typically scrimmaged till he got it to where he liked it. So, it wasn't ever one of those things where your parents just come pick you up at 5:30 because we might go 7:30 that night if he didn't like the way it was going. So I think, the restrictions that have been put in place has been better for player safety. I think the equipment I know is a lot better now. I laugh all the time. You got kids lining up. We wear Rydell helmets here. Now, I'm not trying to endorse anybody, but everybody, those Rydell helmets that kids wear now, I mean, it feels like you got just a brain massage going on. I told them when I played at center, if you was a starter and a good player, you got a bike or an air helmet, and if you was a dog, you got a Rydell, because the old Rydell, those pads got hard, and every day you take it off, your forehead was cut, your bridge of your nose would be cut.
Yes, sir.
So just the equipment from a player safety standpoint is better. But I will say, I said it was good and bad. These kids are a lot better athletes than we were. They're a lot bigger, they're faster, they're stronger. I think it'd be hard to go back and match the physical toughness that people had back in those days, just from a mere fact that, there weren't a lot of excuses, weren't a lot of doctors that were very eager to hold people out. Parents didn't take their kids to the doctor every time they had a runny nose and things like that. I do think that we probably had a little bit tougher, resilient mentality, and we still try to teach a lot of those virtues to our kids here, because I can't just not come to work if I got a headache. But, and our people do a great job buying into that. Most of the parents over here are the same hardcore, tough, strong-minded people.
Part of the community.
It is, and all, but as a coach, I'd be lying if I didn't say that some of these changes have been for the good. Now, I will say I'm a little turned off right now with some of the blindside block stuff. I get not using your helmet as a battering ram. I get not hitting kids above the shoulder. I get all that part of it, but I do think some of the stuff that we're calling today on some of these peel back blocks and things where you're putting a shoulder in somebody's chest, that's just football. You take all that out of it. Coach Burgess used to always say, if you don't want to hit them, put a dress on them. And I'm like, I'm not positive in the next 25 years, I'm not positive that I'll get to watch my grandkids play tackle football as we know it.
Yeah.
And that's sad, because it's a great builder of character in young men, and I know you're going to have some of them people out there and some of them other crazy organizations that's going to talk about the brutality and all that type of stuff. Every now and then it's all right to be a little bit tough.
Yeah, that's part of it. I think it makes me, like you said.
Yeah.
Here's a question that I always like to ask people, and I think this is obviously going to apply to you. How in the world do you do a work-life balance? I mean, how do
Yeah.
maintain that with the family?
Well, I've often said that my priorities are my faith, my family. If I was still in school, it would be school next, and then football. But since I'm not in school anymore, it's faith, family, and football. and I think you have to keep it that way. Just this afternoon, we practice on the morning times on Thursday, so we don't have practice this afternoon. And this afternoon, there'll be a lot of folks that probably stick around the field houses at their places and work till 8 and 9 o'clock on Thursday night, getting ready for tomorrow. We're gonna do some things with the kids this afternoon, and we don't do anything here as a staff on Saturdays. I tell all our coaches that Saturdays is for your family. Watch college football, go watch the Pee Wees play, whatever you want to do. Spend time with your own family. And then here, I don't bring them in until 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon for film study, the coaches. We don't bring the kids in at all on Saturday or Sunday. Coaches, I tell them, go to church, go eat lunch with your family, go eat at grandma's house, whatever you do that's your Sunday tradition. I want people to still have a life. Football's what I do, but it's not who I am. And I feel like that's something that often gets overlooked in people. And it's sad when you hear the stories of marriages breaking up and parents having disconnects with their kids because of the work day and the stress that's there. We do live in a time where there's a lot shorter leashes with coaches. There is a lot more pressure on coaches than there used to be 30 years ago. It wasn't uncommon to see somebody stay at the same place for 14, 15, 20 years.
We're losing records
sometimes.
Right,
but because the people in the community understood that those men were pouring their souls into the kids, and they were good men, they were good examples, and they were good leaders, win-loss records did not necessarily get you fired. And nowadays, there's a superintendent that's sitting in every school system that has people from the outside constantly putting pressure on them, because winning football games in this state's important, and that principal's got people putting pressure on them. And coaches are making more money than they've ever made before today. The pay for coaching high school football is absurd compared to what it was for when my coach was coaching in high school. But along with that goes expectations. If you're going to be paid a handsome amount to be a high school head football coach, you better produce. And if you don't, they're going to have to find somebody else to get it done. So, I think it can be done. And we've got probably 3 or 4 guys on staff here that I think will be head football coaches before it's over with in their career. And I just want to try to set an example for them and show them a blueprint on how it can be done. And they can still have family, and they can still be a part of their kids' lives. And, if they choose to follow that, that's their business. Whenever they have their program, they can do it the way they want to. But, it definitely can be done. Nobody in the world loved their wife more than I love Rachel. I love Sean, Sloan, and Savannah. I'd walk away from football today if I had to for any one of those 4. But, that to have 2 boys on the team, have a little girl that's in 8th grade that's crazy about coming to watch her brothers play, and a wife that also coaches, and so she understands. I feel like the Lord's blessed me with the best life in the world. I've got, in my opinion, the #1 family in the world, the #1 job in the world. I think I got the job that everybody in the world would desire.
That's an amazing answer. I really, truly enjoyed hearing that, actually. With a family like that, you can't go wrong in the support system you got there, Coach. I love it.
Yeah.
What drives you the most at this point in your career? You've won the rings, you've won the regions.
Yeah, I still really enjoy getting up and coming to work every day and trying to make a difference in young people's lives. That's and I know a lot of people's out there that just say it Friday night. They think, yeah, that's just what he's supposed to say. That's the politically correct answer. But really, being able to watch these young guys when they come in the program in the 9th grade and watch them grow and mature and realize their potential and have an opportunity to get out of town and do something with their lives, maybe their first generation even trying to go to college, and football gives them an opportunity to better their lives. That's what really drives me. And enjoying, again, the people that I work with, these coaches that work with me, I love them to death, and their families and the school system, the kids. There's not a bad day for me at work at Piedmont. And as long as I feel that way, I want to be able to keep doing it. Don't really have any personal goals left to achieve. I'm thankful to get the opportunity to coach my 2 boys. I was one of those parents that never really coached them growing up in youth league. Number 1, I didn't really have the time to commit to it. But number 2, I often thought if something ever happened to me, I wanted my boys to to have the opportunity to play for other men that could be good influences on them. And I knew that, good Lord willing, that I'd get an opportunity to coach them when they got to high school. Now, I did coach both my boys in middle school baseball, and that was something I really enjoyed. But been very, very fortunate here that both of my boys have come through at times where the men coaching their teams, Little League baseball, basketball, football, whatever it was, were extremely knowledgeable. Some of them old high school coaches, and then the other ones that might not have been coaches in the school system before were men that loved kids and would spend time and take them out there and throw extra buckets of baseballs to them for batting practice, and just over and over pouring their time into them. And they didn't need me out there with them. They had good people leading them, and I'm very thankful for that. And now watching Savannah, she's in middle school, and just getting to spend some time with her once or twice a week.
Softball star.
She's a softball player, and getting to throw her batting practice and work with her, and just trying to be dad and going to watch her play. She plays a little in the fall, and went and watched her play last Saturday, and just getting to see her enjoy what she does, and Rachel coaching it, and the passion that she has and time she pours into it for our program here. And to me, I couldn't envision a life without ball being one of the focal points.
You get nervous watching her play?
A lot more nervous watching Savannah than anything else. I tell Rachel, my blood pressure goes up at a travel softball tournament on a Saturday, probably 10 times as high as any football Friday night. I watch a bunch of dads running around banty roostering with their sleeves cut off and their sunglasses on the back of their hat, turn around backwards and hollering all the softball lingo, and I just want to say, man, 15 years ago, you didn't even know women's softball existed, but you got everybody out there trying to be the next Patrick Murphy, and I just have to bite my tongue and sit down and shut up, and sometimes I can't bite my tongue, but I get infuriated about everyone, and it has nothing to do with the girls' play on the field. The play on the field of the girls is amazing how far it's come.
Oh yeah. Even
at the 8 and under, 10 and under, 12 and under level, but the actions of some of these goofy parents I'm talking about, I can't think of a tournament I hadn't been to, or I can't think of a tournament that I have been to where I hadn't seen some kind of controversy between parents. And like I said, luckily it hadn't been our parents, so I'm glad about that, But you look over on the other field and you got two daddies squared off over there over something. I'm like, man, this is the craziest thing I ever seen.
That's true, though. I've seen it with my own two eyes. All right, Coach, I'm going to close with this right here. I appreciate your time today. When you get later on in your career, and you still got a lot of juice in you, I can tell by interviewing you, sir, but when you get towards the twilight of your career, when will you know it's time to walk away from the game of football?
I think it goes back what I said earlier, just when I don't enjoy getting up, coming to work. This is year 26 in the system for me. As far as Alabama retirement, I could go out at any point in time from that standpoint. But I tell everybody I'm just a dumb old football coach. I don't know what else I could do anyway. That's the thing. People talk about it. I don't want to be one of those guys that sticks around too long. I don't want to be one of those guys that hangs on and it's not what's best for the school, not what's best for the program. I feel like as long as I have the passion that I have now, wanting to come to work every day and enjoying making a difference in young people's lives and feeling like I'm getting the most out of them, I feel like it's where God wants me to be. And if I ever get to a point where I don't want to be here, or I feel like I'm being a hindrance to them, or I'm hanging in there too long, I just hope some of my good friends will just say, hey, you need to think about it. It's not going to hurt my feelings, but I've watched some good men stick around too long, and it tarnished their legacy at that place and the reputation that they had in the eyes of a lot of people. And I just, like I said, I'm a pretty blunt guy myself. I don't have a problem somebody come up and say, hey, Coach, you may be hanging in there too long. I don't want to do anything to hurt Piedmont High School, and I tell people all the time, I want this place to be more successful when I'm gone. If that happens, then I feel like that I've done my part of passing it on to the next guy.
Absolutely. Coach, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you sitting in with us.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate you having me.